For most of my life, I have been suicidal. I have struggled with anxiety and depression all throughout my life due to events that happened when I was a child. So being pregnant with Ylvie and having this diagnosis, thinking about suicide was not a new thing. What was new was that now I was a mother and Ylvie was inside of me. And the stress of everything that was going on, my mind kept considering suicide. But at the same time, I was in a bind because if I couldn't do that, because then it would hurt my baby. I was seeing a therapist at the time, and she almost admitted me to the hospital for my inability to handle what was going on. She ended up not doing that. I was put on antidepressants, which I am still on today, and the antidepressants that I'm on also help me with my anxiety. So for the rest of my pregnancy, I kept her diagnosis to myself and my family. I didn't really have a lot of friends at the time. I was transitioning from being this all night, everyday party girl to a pregnant woman. And I looked around and I didn't have any friends really. So this was an extremely lonely period of time for me. And it was just really me, Ylvie, and my mom and my brother. I cried every night, if not every night, all day, every day. I remember lying in bed and crying and crying and crying, and then feeling guilty for crying because crying and being stressed out is bad for the baby. So I was in this conundrum again of being a mother and the mom guilt. I was already feeling mom guilt pregnant. So I am pregnant and I am dreading my due date, which they set an induction date for January 21st. And for the rest of my pregnancy, I took it as my possible only chance of being a mother. Because while Ylvie was inside of me, she was fine. She was getting the oxygen she needed. But as soon as she was born, she was going to need a open heart surgery. And the possibility of the unknown, was too much for me to take and think about. So I focused on my pregnancy and making the most of it. So I talked to her every day. We listened to music together. I read to her. And I didn't want to give birth to her. Every day was a day closer to giving birth to her and the possibility that she might not live. But time passes, and January 21st came along, and I went to the hospital, and I had expected, this is my first pregnancy, my first baby, and I expected, okay, maybe it'll take 12 hours to give birth, or the longest, 16 hours. I ended up being in labor for 36 hours. Ylvie was born at 7:30 p.m., right in the middle of shift change, on January 22nd, 2016. And right before I pushed her out, the nurses told me, okay, give me one good push, and then I want you to look down there between your legs. Look down there when you push. So I gave one big push, and then I looked, and they held her up for me for a few seconds, and then they ran out of the room. And then I waited. I was delirious at that point from being in labor that long, and I'm of course anxious. I'm crying, and every minute that passes, I keep thinking of the worst, and I don't want to do that. I want to be positive. I'm afraid to even think of the possibility that something's wrong, but time keeps ticking, and I'm asking the nurses, where's my baby? And they're trying to assure me, you know, they are stabilizing her, everything is fine. And then after a long while, they bring her in, and I was able to hold her for a few minutes. She didn't require oxygen at that point, and she had an arterial line in, so I got to hold her for maybe less than 10 minutes, and I got to look at her face and finally meet her face to face. And then she needed to go to the pediatric ICU. So I gave her back to the nurses. And then it was the first time in many, many months that I was without her. And she was alive, and they had a plan set in place to take care of her. And that's when I never had another suicidal thought again. And I haven't since then. Because as a mother, I needed to be there for her. I needed to fight for her. And hold on, babe, I'm almost done. And so I have focused on that since then, to be there for Ylvie and to try my best for her. Come here, babe. Happy birthday. Yes, baby. Oh, I'll help you. Okay. Say hi. That's what I wanted to share with you guys. Thanks. Happy birthday, babe.